Hey guys, welcome back to Honkai Star Rail. In today's video, I know that everyone's looking at the roster of characters in the game in the lead up to launch and deciding, what character they want to go for, whether they just like a character, anything like that. So in this video, I wanted to look at a very key point inside the game, which is skill points, which on surface level seems very basic. Okay, a basic attack, it generates a skill point, and an active skill consumes a skill point, but it actually becomes very important when you look at team building and the things you want to do with the characters that you want to build. So I'm hoping that this can help you sort of form an idea of the kind of characters that you want to use based on the playstyle you want to go for. I will make more videos talking about who I think the best characters are to start your account with, banners to summon for and stuff like that, best 4-stars, all that sort of stuff. But this is more about getting a very key point behind the game and core mechanic into your understanding. And that way you can have an idea about the characters you want to play and the way they are actually going to play and the teams that they can be used in. So hopefully that made some sense. So let's jump over and take a look at what I want to show you guys. We do have a team builder over here on Pridewin, which I'll leave a link to in the description too, but we're not going to start with that. I'm going to start with something a little bit more basic, and that is going to be over here. So what I have here is an example team. Now, yes, we have 5 stars. It's just an easy team to show examples, and I'll go into some evolving examples of this to show you guys the basics. Now, this is absolutely at its basic fundamental principles, but once you include things like speed, it does evolve and get a lot more complicated, but I just wanted to have some basic examples to show you guys. So essentially here, what we've gone with is we've gone with the team of Zila as your main DPS. You've got Bronya as your support. We've got a healer in Natasha, and then we've got the fire trailblazer as our, final slot. This can flex around between a sub DPS that, depending on the team, you can have like a secondary DPS, or you can have a buffer, or you can have like another defensive unit like a shielder that we have here. So this is a base, basic type team that I want to go through. Now, I just wanted to throw in here in editing that this is more geared towards later game when you got more characters to play with and stuff like this. I will go through early game teams as well, but I just wanted to emphasize that yes, break element also plays a big impact in the creation of your team as well. So ideally having at least 1 or 2 characters that can break the enemy on top of having good skill efficiency will become a thing, but we're not worrying about the elements right now. We're just trying to form teams to show you guys these fundamentals. Now, the one thing I want you to notice is what I've got down under the character images is their basic, how many basic skills I think they'll use and how many skills I think they'll use. Now, this is basing it off of them all taking 10 actions. Like I said, speed will affect this, but I just wanted to keep it simple for the first example. So let's say in a battle, these guys are all going to take 10 actions. Now, if we have Zila being your main DPS who just wants to always use her skill because it's going to deal the most damage and give you the most output, that means she's going to use her skill 10 times from her 10 actions. Now, if we look at something like Bronya, and this is where Bronya has a different way to be played, which we'll go through in a sec, but the common thing that I see, is that Bronya, the idea of when you look at traditional turn-based games, it's like, okay, she can buff an ally, let's just buff our damage dealer and get more damage out. And just in editing, I wanted to clarify with Bronya, when I say buff, that is her skill, which actually fully increases the gauge of the ally, basically giving them an extra turn. Now, with that means she's just going to be using skills, meaning that she's going to be consuming 10 more skills if you just use her skill to buff Zila. Now, on top of that, this would mean Zila would actually consume more skill points, but for the sake of simplicity, we're not going to go into that. So essentially, if you had Bronya using her skill just to buff, and then you had Zila using her skill to deal the most damage, you're now already consuming 20 skill points in this team. Then if we go to the other units, for a healer, maybe you do 7 basic attacks and 3 skills because you need to heal every once in a while. These are just general ratios that I sort of play with. Different fights are going to be different, but let's say that. So you're using 7 basics and you're using 3 skills, which means you're actually generating an additional 4 skill points because each basic generates a skill point and each skill consumes a skill point. So your +7 minus 3 equals your 4. Now, the Trailblazer Fire doesn't really need to ult too much. Maybe if there's a big attack, single target that you want to taunt, or if there's a big AoE that you want to put the damage mitigation up, you'll use that skill. Something like that, but in general, doesn't use it too much. So pretty efficient character. You know, the shielding is based on a passive. So we're going to use 8 basics and 2 skills. So your 8 minus 2 gives you a 6-point generation. So in our team, when we add up all these white numbers, we end up with total skill point generation is 15 and total skill point spend is 25, which our net income becomes negative 10. So we're spending 10 more skill points than we're actually generating. Now, at the start of the battle, you do start with 3, or if you have a specific gear set on one of your characters, you could start with 4 skill points. So in short fights, using Bronya just to buff Zila to clap it really quick is going to be viable. But when we get into endgame type formats, you can see that we're going to have an issue with this team where we're going to have to start using basic skills with our Bronya and our Zila to be able to just generate the skill points to be able to use skills again. So you're going to get into skill deficit, which is something that can be harsh for your team. So the one way we can alleviate that with this team, if we go into this next image, is the only change that we did here was instead of Bronya buffing Zila, what we're doing with this one now is a bit different because Bronya's skill actually gives a full turn gauge to an ally. So you can use it to buff herself, and then she gets another turn, and then she can use her basic skill. So what this does is it actually allows Bronya to generate more energy, meaning she can ult more often and keep the ultimate buff on her whole team, which still benefits damage. But on top of that, it means she's buffing her own damage with the skill, and then she's going to use her basic attack to deal some okay damage. And then when we further extrapolate that past that, and we look at what she's actually doing every turn, and I know we're only talking about 10 actions, but because in every action, she's going to use a skill on herself and then a basic attack, it means she's using 10 skills and 10 basics in 10 actions, essentially in 10 quote unquote turns, if you will. So this makes her a neutral unit, and that is like a much more efficient way to use her. And then if we leave these two at the same consumption slash generation, we're actually spending 10 skill points and generating 10 skill points. Our net income is 0. That means we've zeroed out the team and we are very efficient, meaning we're generating what we're spending so we can continue to do those actions. Now, like I said, every situation is going to be different, so it could change up, but that is the basic principle you want to look towards. Now, if we go one step further and we look at, say, using Arlen as your main DPS, now he does not bring the same damage as Azila, but he has a very unique thing in that even though he's using 10 skills, his skill consumes HP instead of skill points. So now if we look at something like this, we're actually getting a net income of positive 10 skill points. So if you're using Arlen instead of something like Azila, that means maybe you can bring a secondary DPS in this slot, maybe another buffing unit that wants to use their skill more often, or you could play it like this, and now you have the capabilities with Bronya to actually start using her buff more often to buff a Arlen. So maybe Bronya could use her skill, like, because we're in so much positive, maybe some turns she could use her skill to buff herself and then use her skill to buff Arlen. Yes, she is at a -2, but when we have such a positive income, you're not going to be able to do that every turn, but time to like every maybe second, third turn, you can do that. Or you can get to her turn and instead of buffing herself and then basic, she just buffs Arlen once and he deals more damage. So it opens up flexibility. So this is why I absolutely love Arlen, because he can use his skill every turn without consuming skill points, and it makes it much more efficient in the team. Now, these are not like the best teams, anything like that. It was just very simple teams that I could demonstrate that with. Now I want to jump over here into the team builder. Now, I have to give one massive shout out in this, and please go support this guy. He's an absolute legend. We've been dirty theory crafting for like a week. He's way more intelligent than me. This guy makes incredible spreadsheets. It's grim. He's actually got a Path of Exile channel, which is a very big, large channel for that game, and he's made a Honkai Star Rail channel. So please go show him some support. Watch his videos. Subscribe. He is super intelligent. The things he does with Google Sheets is amazing. If we look, for instance, here and we go to damage calculations, he's made all these spreadsheets to like simulate damage in isolation. Take all this stuff with a grain of salt, but his theory crafting is crazy. So please go support him, because he has helped with the construction of this team builder along with Antilla from Pridewin. So massive shout out to both those guys for all their work they put into this. Now we're going to get into this. I want to show you guys how to do this so you can play around with it yourself. I don't want to go too deep into it, but basically when we look at what we have here, because I want to show you how speed impacts things. So you want to have it on advanced mode. You have to put a character in to get it into advanced mode, and then it will stay there. Now, we're doing this on 7 cycles. 7 cycles is like an arbitrary amount of action turn, basically, that it takes. I'm not even going to try and explain cycles. It's basically in chaos memory, in like the Abyss from Genshin, let's say, you have a set amount of quote unquote turns that they call cycles that you have to defeat the enemies in to get full rewards. And 7 is what you want to sort of clear everything in. So that's why we default it to 7 for this. So once again, we can look at this Zila thing. We can do like the Zila, Bronya. Who else do we have? We had Natasha, and who was our final unit? The Fire MC. So there we go. So if we look at a team kind of like this, and now we can see, you know, it's got this general thing. Now, I was using the 10 because it was easy to represent in my images over here. But when we look over here in the team builder, what we have is you can see actions per 7 cycles. So based on these 7 cycles that we're trying to defeat all the enemies in, she's going to get to use 8 actions. But Zila's skill, if we go back over here, oops, forward. Skill is going to give her 25% speed. Now, obviously, until she uses her first skill, she's not going to have it, but let's just add 25% speed to her, which is about 143. So this brings her up to 10 actions. So now in this 7 turns, she's using 10, but if you can see here, Bronya's only using 7. We're only using 7 on Natasha, and our Trailblazer is only using 7. So if we zero out Bronya, meaning she's using a skill every turn and a basic, so she's doing that 0 mode for her. And then we go into here and say, let's say we're using 4 basic attacks. Let's do like 5 basic attacks to 2 skills. Yeah, because we have 7 actions. And this one, we're going to use like 6 basics and 1 skill. Now, you can still see that we're not generating enough. However, we do have those 3 to 4 points that we start the battle with. So this would be like possibly okay. But I always like to just balance things out. Now, to do so, when we look at speed, and this is getting a bit more in depth, I'm probably going to put this more in another guide, but I just want to show you how speed impacts this thing, is that say we put speed boots on Natasha, so we get a 25 speed increase from her. That's going to put an extra, 123 speed. That's going to mean she gets 9 actions, which maybe means we can do another, we can go up to like maybe 7 and 2. And then we get an extra couple skill points. We can put 25 speed on this, bring it to 120. And now we get exactly 9 actions in these amount of turns, which brings us up to generation. So that's going to bring us up to 9 actions, which maybe we can use 8, maybe we can use 7 and 2, let's say. So now we're generating 10 and spending 10. Whoops, sorry, this was meant to be 0 and that's meant to be 10. So now we're consuming 10 and generating 10, and that becomes more efficient. But like I said, speed really impacts this because like I said, we're not like my example here, which was just basic to understand the math. Over here, Zila is actually getting 10 turns and these two are only getting 9, which means we have to try and generate even harder than we were, which means we have to sacrifice something. So like I said, you can jump over here and have a play. You can play with custom speed values. Now, obviously, gear's going to have substats, all that stuff. So your speeds will adjust accordingly. And this is not like a perfect thing to do it, but it's just a good way to get an idea of if you place your heroes in here, your characters, and say, okay, how do I want to use this character? For instance, Zila, main damage dealer. I want to use her skill every time. Okay, then I look at my other characters and think, how often am I going to use their skills? Then you can sort of try and get a roundabout team around whatever character you want to play and the playstyle you want to use with them, and then you can form a team around it. But like I said, this isn't like a full in-depth team building guide. It's not a full in-depth like who to get guide. I just wanted to get this basic thing of skill points because like I said, it seems very, very basic on a surface level, but it actually becomes very complex, especially when you include things like speed and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully this made you understand it a little bit. I apologize if it was a bit confusing. I tried this a few times to record it to try and get it pretty well, and I feel like this is the one I am happiest with so far. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.